If you're interested in supporting the channel, there are two things you can do. Flipside Gaming is offering a 10% discount for any order $10 or more if you use the promo code VOIDMAGE on their website. That is VOIDMAGE in all caps. I will also have an affiliate link to tcgplayer.com. If you use that link, any purchase you make on that website will go towards supporting the channel. I appreciate the support. Also hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Hello everyone, welcome back to another top 10 Commander video, bringing you another creature type theme. One of the oldest and one of the most loved creature types, knights. Magic the Gathering has loved the high fantasy theme, and you see this with knights, dragons. While it may not be unique to Magic the Gathering, we do have a wide variety of knights. It's not just your typical knights fighting dragons on horseback, although there are a bunch of those. Knights are not just humans. You see different kinds of knights like zombie knights, cat knights, vampire knights. So it goes far beyond what you would usually expect out of the creature type. Like all of my top 10 videos, I like to start it off here with some honorable mentions. These are going to be some knights that adhere to the knight theme. So if you want to go for tribal, these are pretty good, but I don't think they were good enough for the top 10. Hakon, Stromgald, Scourge, and Ariel, Knight of Windgrace. Hakon is very situational, but if you are able to get him into the graveyard, you have very good knight support for the rest of the game. Ariel, Knight of Windgrace is pretty sweet, but a little too slow. And while there are a ton of knights to choose from, it's not as easy as you might think to go wide with this kind of strategy, but still really nice to have the options of creating creature tokens or removal. And it was at this point in Dominaria where we started getting even more knight support. So if you wanted to go for knight tribal, we now have plenty of cards to choose from. So let's start it off here with the list. Number 10 is Var Child, Betrayer of Keldor. One of the most interesting and out there commander options on this list. Also just a very good card in one of the 99. The design is incredibly unique because you don't usually see this in red. You honestly don't even see this anywhere else. You have to deal combat damage first, which might be a deterrent, but when you do that, player gets that many red survivor creature tokens, which are completely harmless to you, but when Var Child leaves the battlefield, you gain control of them. So a neat little interaction if you're into token decks or you just want to have a nice unique combat trick deck. Dealing as much combat damage as possible with Var Child will net you a ton of tokens, and it's also a pretty political card if you can help your opponents get some creature tokens, because sometimes it means you're going to have to make deals with your opponents, dealing damage to give them those survivor tokens. Very interesting creature option, no matter where you want to put her. Number 9 is Midnight Reaper. One of the most simple knights on this list, but it's not even so much because it's a knight. It is also a zombie knight, so you get some flexibility there. Also works out really well in that tribal deck. But whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Midnight Reaper deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. It's not a maze, so you are going to have to be dealt damage if you have any sort of combo, so be careful, but most of the time that's just going to be pure card advantage because our life totals are pretty high. Similar to cards like Grim Haruspex, these cards are just really powerful because they sit on the field and just draw us cards. A very underrated thing is to just load your deck up with cards like this that slowly draw you more cards, so you always keep a full hand, you always draw into answers, your bombs, whatever you need to keep your game going. Brilliant card. Number 8 is Kinz, Cavalier, one of the few actual knights that synergize with knights on this list. Giving all of your knights double strike is pretty simple, but double strike is probably one of the best keywords in the entire game, and it's not even just a commander thing. No matter where you go, double strike is going to win you games, but in commander you do have that 21 commander damage as an option, so double strike makes that seem like it's a lot smaller. But here we have another creature type, Kithkin, bringing something different to the table even though it only synergizes with knights. It always fascinates me when I see the different creature types. Number 7 is Rafik of the Many. You're going to notice creatures are on this list because they're knights, not just because they synergize with knights, and they're obviously going to be good cards. Rafik of the Many has been a favorite for a lot of people who play the Voltron style of commander, where the goal is to deal that 21 commander damage as quickly as possible. While Rafik of the Many has aged a little bit, Exalted is still a unique keyword that we haven't seen a lot of. And in addition to that Exalted, you have an Exalted-like ability to give a creature double strike whenever it attacks alone. So to pair it up with the +1/+1 you're getting off of Rafik's Exalted, with no other equipment, auras, you're going to have 4/4 double strike, which is going to be 8 damage total, making it so easy to just swing a couple times with Rafik and end someone's game. May not be super strong with the Knight synergies, but as far as Voltron goes, Rafik has been one of the stronger options for a long time. Number 6 is Edgar Markov. Here we have another creature that's mainly in here because it's a knight, but still a very powerful commander option. And also a vampire knight, so it changes things up a bit from the typical human knights. I shouldn't have to explain him that much. He has been one of the more popular commander options in the past couple of years. Main downside is being strictly a vampire commander option. You lose a lot if you don't adhere to that tribal strategy, but when you do, it is such a force to be reckoned with. Vampire tokens with the ability to give them +1/+1 counters pretty easily is such a ridiculous thing to have to deal with. This isn't even mentioning the eminence and how easy it is to get those tokens in the first place. If you have to go with Vampire Tribal, at least in the last 2 years, it's been a no-brainer. Number 5 is the new Sir Gwen, Hero of Ashvale. I like Sir Gwen because it's not just about Knight Tribal, although it's probably going to be best if you have Knight Tribal, mostly because of her last ability to give all of your equipment Equip Knight 0. But you still have the benefit of playing an equipment-based deck that is also capable of drawing you cards. And worst case scenario, you can always just equip it to her for 0. That is such a ridiculously powerful thing to have, because the biggest downside for many Voltron decks is being able to equip multiple equipment to your commander. Let's try not to dance around it too much. You really want to deal commander damage in a deck like this. So other than being a typical human knight on horseback, you have a very solid equipment-based commander option here that just so happens to support knights really well. Number 4 is kind of a split decision, but I'll leave it up to you guys. Cavalier of Night or Cavalier of Dawn. I'm personally going to go with Cavalier of Dawn because I just like that removal better. And I also do like the ability to bring back artifacts or enchantments, but I could also see how much easier it would be to abuse Cavalier of Night in a graveyard deck. But the Cavaliers from M20 I think are just perfect for Commander. The cycle of the Cavaliers I think very much mirrors the cycle of the Titans, the Primordials, all of which are pretty good in Commander. That flexibility allows them to fit into more than just Knight Tribal decks. And when you have more than just a good ETB, you have a death trigger, means that they're multifaceted, they're going to help your deck in more ways than just one. And whenever you have a card that can synergize with your deck in more ways than just one, that's usually a sign of a good card. Then number 3 is the new card, Sir Conrad the Grim. Honestly, one of the most powerful cards I've seen this year. It is ridiculous how much power you have available here. You could play with Mill if you really wanted to. It doesn't really seem like there's a way that you could interact with creatures in mono black that wouldn't be taken advantage of with Sir Conrad. You could even play Delve if you wanted to. As long as those creatures are leaving the graveyard, it's going to deal 1 damage to each opponent. It's not restricted to non-token creatures, so if you have a bunch of token creatures off of Endrick, Sar, Master Breeder, those all dying, again, it's going to deal 1 damage to each opponent. I just talked about how the Cavaliers are incredibly flexible, but Sir Conrad is probably the most versatile card on this whole list. While I don't think he's going to do that much for Knight Tribal, he's just a Knight. I don't really see him being that good in combat. He's just a really good card that happens to be a Knight. Still belongs up higher on this list for that reason though. Number 2 is Pure Steel Paladin. In a similar way to why Sir Gwen is such a good commander option, Pure Steel Paladin is just a really good creature with the flexibility of only being mono white. What you also have here is the ability to draw cards off of an equipment strategy, which in Voltron or any equipment-based deck is not an easy thing to do. The Metalcraft equipment cost reduction, though, is only really dependent on the number of artifacts you control, not what creature type. So Pure Steel Paladin is probably going to be a really good knight in a commander deck like Sir Gwen, but also a really good card in just about any equipment deck, because most equipment decks are going to be playing white anyway. So all around, you're talking about a very solid knight card. Synergizes with knights because knights are typically going to need equipment. Making that equipment cost cheaper is nothing but good for the deck, and also a very solid card draw engine. Has been one of the better cards for equipment strategies for a long time. And then number 1, this card, in terms of just pure power, it's hard for me to argue against it, but Balan Wandering Knight, a cat knight, offers you the versatility of only being mono white and the power of something like Rafik the Many. It is just ridiculous how easy it is to give Balan double strike when you also have a cheap ability of only 2 mana to attach all of your equipment to Balan. So flexible that you could throw it into pretty much any deck you wanted to that's also playing equipment. These cards typically do well because you don't have to invest that much mana to get in more swings. It has the benefit of double strike, which again again, one of the most powerful abilities you can have in Commander. You have it on what is probably the best way to get to 21 Commander damage. That 2-mana ability is still probably the biggest reason why it's up at number 1. You have some of the most expensive equip costs, like Colossus Hammer, you can just pretty much ignore. Most equipment are going to make it easier to deal damage with things like Trample. You don't really have to worry about blockers, and it pretty much affords you to do what most combat decks want to do, keep swinging and never stop swinging. Just a ridiculously overpowered knight. But anyway guys, that's going to do it for this top 10 video. Let me know what you think about knights. Really enjoyed doing this video. Knights are one of my favorite creature types. They've been seen throughout Magic, all different kinds of sets. They come in all different forms. You all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.